I have to wonder how many folks there are out there who are like me, who are basically without any kind of political representation, without any, if you will, party, but really pretty much any political representation, particularly in the areas in which they live. I know I'm not alone, I get that, and I have a feeling many have probably recently begun to feel like this, but I've felt like this for years. I've felt what amounts to disenfranchised for years. Hello and welcome to the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Wednesday, the 2nd of December of 2020. I welcome all who are coming aboard on Rumble, on the podcast, and on YouTube. And if you're coming aboard on the podcast, obviously you can find me on the podcast at podcasts.kpschubert.com or on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify at the moment. And I'm working to get more online as I'm able to do that. You can search for me using either Kurt's Religion or Politics or the Daily Summation. Usually Kurt's Religion and Politics works better from everything that I can see. I'm not whining about how I feel about the disenfranchisement that I feel. I'm just kind of telling you that it's how things are for me. I've spent many, many years being a person who feels like there's really nobody who particularly well represents what he believes when it comes to things political. And more, I sort of associate with the ideology that the right presents and represents. So, for example, I'm for limited government. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and so forth. But in general, though, even though I tend to fall sort of more on the right and more towards the Republican viewpoint and maybe a little bit towards the libertarian at times, there's really nobody who particularly represents me in what I believe. And one of the problems that I see as an ongoing thing is that lots of people who are in various positions that I actually somewhat agree with have far too much of an interest in working, quote, across the aisle, in conceding when dealing with, others in politics, and they're willing to sort of give away the store in order to have that happen. I'm not saying that they don't disagree, and by the way, I disagree with a lot of them too on some of the things that they believe. And the funny thing is, so for example, I tend to be fairly rightist in my perspectives. Well, those people who actually even sort of represent me, I disagree with their perspectives, even if they weren't tainted by what the left says. But the reality is, like I say, even if they weren't tainted, I would disagree with them. And that's part of the point. That's part of the issue, right? So part of what I kind of wonder is, out there, I know that there are a bunch of people who have a whole bunch of different views on this. And many of them, like I say, to one degree or another, to one extent or another, feel disenfranchised. Of this, I'm pretty sure. But my question at this point is, if I could find even basically a smattering of folks out there who are like me, and I'm not sure, by the way, I doubt that's the case. I just want you to know. I'm not sure that I could, to be frank with you. Not even who are close to me, not even who I'm, find myself somewhat agreeing with. I don't think that probably will happen. The point of all of this is I have to wonder how many other people, and particularly now as things are moving forward in some directions that are maybe not so great, I have to wonder how many people out there are like this. How many people are finding themselves looking at the political establishment and going, these guys really don't represent me at all. They really don't represent me at all. Or they go, yeah, they kind of represent me on this. They maybe represent me on that. But the truth is, overall, they don't. And I don't know, maybe this is a bigger thing than I realize. Maybe it's been happening for longer than I understand or recognize, and maybe people have been seeing things like this for a very long time. Other people. I have for a very long time. I have literally for basically my whole life. I thought for a long time I was a leftist, but I never saw anybody who I felt like represented me in that regard. Then I started to move towards the right in lots of ways, and I began to realize that really on the right, the same thing happens. There are a lot of people who seem to be there to protect themselves and to have a career, and maybe they're doing some things that are sort of rightist in nature, but largely they're not. And again, to be fair, look, I'm not really a rightist. I consider right and left to be opposing poles, right, which many people do, and I consider the left to be about total control and the right to be about basically more or less anarchy. And it means that I tend to look at things like communism and socialism differently than a lot of people, because I see communism as a very rightist perspective, because in the end, I believe what it's supposed to do is lead towards people who govern themselves and don't really have very much use for government. Socialism, particularly if it's fairly strong, I tend to view as very leftist, because it's all about government being in control of the people, much in the same way in my mind as dictatorship and despotism. You can argue that socialism has different agendas than a lot of dictators and a lot of despots, but you can't really argue that it doesn't seek to control the people who are under it, supposedly for their benefit and for the benefit of the other people in society who can't speak for themselves, who are unrepresented or whatever. But the reality is this: I don't believe, based on what I know at this point, that there's really much of anybody out there who represents me at this point in time. I believe that there are a lot of people who I can agree with somewhat, and I believe that there are a few people among the political pundits who are at least saying the right things, right? I can give you names of individuals who I believe are doing that, and some of them who have been doing it for a very long time. When you start to look at the people who are actually in political office, and if you start to look at their records with regard to the various things that they're doing, whether it's voting for given legislation or upholding or not upholding various laws, whatever it happens to be, what you learn is that many of these people are not representative of my values in very much of any way. If they do it at all, it's in a very limited sense, right? And as I say, I believe that there, by this point, whether there were before or not, there are a lot of people who are in that same place. There are a lot of people who believe that government is not representative of their values. And again, what do you do about this? About the only thing I can think to do is to look towards people who are more representative of one's values, with the idea that if you put those people in positions of power, at least some of the time you're going to receive some sort of representation. Now, if you're like me, that means talking about people you think actually represent your values. Right, so it involves talking about people like Rand Paul, people to some degree. Well, I don't want to label myself too much, but yeah, honestly, a lot of the things that Donald Trump did are excellent examples of things I want to see done. Does that mean Donald Trump was a great or is a great guy? No. Does that mean he makes no mistakes? Absolutely not. Does that mean that he's pure as the driven snow? Certainly, definitely not the case. So I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that the people that I support, in fact, by the very nature of what I'm telling you right now, you have to realize that there are certain things about those people that's going to make it almost invariably true that they're not going to be people largely that I support, believe in, etc. They're just not. They're not going to be that. That's not how that's going to work. So if that's what you're thinking I'm saying, let me make it quite plain to you. It is not the case. Many times they're going to do and say things that I'm going to go, nope, that's not what I believe. That's not what I support. And that includes among the pundits, and it includes among the actual political class. And as I say, it's my view that probably there are a bunch of people out there who are in this same boat. And that's one more reason I can't really whine about it or cry about it, is in my opinion, with all of these people who probably feel basically the same way, though they don't necessarily have the same values that I do, the chances are pretty good I'm a fairly common thing in terms of how I look at that, and in terms of how I look at the level of disenfranchisement that I quote, suffer, right? All right, so that's sort of what I'm getting at this point, is I am a person basically sans party. By the way, that was the subject of this blog post / video / podcast. I am a person sans party. I don't really have a party per se. I have people who represent me part of the time, and then the rest of the time, they really don't. All right, I should go ahead and wrap up this video now. It's getting to be long enough that I'm sure I'm boring a bunch of people to death. I hope you're having a great day. Today is Wednesday, so it's getting on for that middle of the week point that everybody likes to see as the downhill slide to the weekend. This is supposed to be a full week. Again, today is the 2nd of December of 2020. Tomorrow will be the 3rd of December of 2020, and it'll be Thursday, and I'm going to do everything that I can to get a video out then. hopefully we will see you tomorrow. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video was recorded on Wednesday, December the 2nd of 2020. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for checking out this video. Remember that you can like it on YouTube and you can give it a rumble on Rumble if you want to do that. I have channels on both YouTube and Rumble. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels. You can subscribe to either one of those if you want to do so. Remember, if you subscribe on YouTube, you probably want to click the notification bell in order to be notified of new content. If you want to see more from me, you can check me out on my blog. That's blogs.kpschubert.com, blogs.kpschubert.com. You can also see my Facebook page. That is Kurt's Religion and Politics on Facebook. You can check out my Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com accounts. My handle on all three of those is at kpschubert. That's at kpschubert. You can check out my podcast. The podcast is at podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcast.kpschubert.com. And finally, you can check me out on Patreon. And if you want to support me, that's probably one of the better places that you can do that. I am Kurt's Religion and Politics there. Thanks again for checking out this video, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.